Okay. In this video, we will be continuing the reading of my full-length novel slash screenplay, Backwoods, as part of the Monster Saga. In the last video, video number 3, we left off with the first act, day 1, which covered scenes 1 through 5, and we even did scene 6 from the next act. Well, today we're going to do the true reading of Act 2 and Act 3, which is going to cover scenes 6 through 10. Well, we're going to start right back off with scene 6, which ends the montage piece from the last act. Alright, so this is going to be scene 6. It will be an exterior setting slash location, nighttime, early AM, continued from and in conjunction with the last scene and act. We're greeted with a shot of the Lasby's station wagon driving down a fairly desolate interstate in the middle of the night. No more sun, no more music. The montage piece and possible opening credits placement comes to an end, and we prepare to move in for an interior shot of the station wagon, with Martin and Paulette Lasby now much less enthusiastic and much more exhausted after driving all day and into the night. Scene 7, which will be an interior setting slash location, still night, early AM, continued from last scene. Back inside the Lasby station wagon with Martin driving, Paulette suddenly stirs awake in the passenger's seat. Still feeling groggy, she yawns and stretches her arms up and over her head in the folded back passenger's side car seat before looking over at Martin and speaking. This scene is going to be connected to the main setting slash location, bold letter C. Paulette addressing Martin in a calm and tired, easygoing voice. How long was I out? Martin, in response to Paulette's question. Several hours. 1 minute you were talking to me, the next you were out like a light. Paulette, all of this excitement must have taken its toll on me. Martin, I'll say. Paulette, knowing that he has been driving all this time, Paulette still asks of Martin, but without giving him time to respond to this initial rhetorical question of hers. Have you been driving all this time? You look tired, Martin. Do you want me to drive for a while so that you can get some shut-eye? Martin, thinking about it for a moment. Yeah, sure. Let me just find an exit where I can pull off and we can switch seats. Paulette. Okay. Now we move to character actions, character descriptives and actions, but I'll be calling them character actions. Sometimes they're setting descriptives, whatever it's meant to be, but we'll call them character actions so you know what I'm referring to whenever we move from dialogue to the actual actions that are going on. And with this one, our actions are, back to it, a brief pause in the conversation. Paulette yawns and again stretches out a bit, seeming to still be waking up. She then speaks again. Paulette, again. Just think, Martin, another day's worth of driving and we'll be there. Martin, yes, and who knows what fun we might have along the way. Paulette, I can't wait to see the western landscape. Martin, me too. Back to character actions. Martin puts a little pressure on the brakes and turns the steering wheel to the right, getting off of the interstate and onto an off-ramp. The scene switches to an exterior view of the station wagon. And, let me just say, okay, first off with the, character descriptions. I'm just going to call them characters. We talked about this in the... I don't have something to call those. You would just see, if you were to see them from my point of view, you would just see a space, and they would be in colons and brackets. So if you were to see them from my point of view, however, we don't have my point of view, so I'm doing the reading, so I do my best to try to explain it, but I'm just going to call them, I mean, they could be setting descriptions also. They could be things going on with the settings, but just for ease of not having, I've already started this in the last episode, in the last video. We're just going to call them character descriptions. More often than not, that's what they're going to be. Or character actions. More often than not, that's what they're going to be. But just know that it could be setting descriptives. And, well, I guess settings don't have well, yeah, settings kind of have actions. If something moves them, the breeze blowing things, that's an example of setting having an action. Alright, enough with semantics, though. But I just want you to understand that. That way, whenever we get there, you know, whenever I say something like that, you know what I mean. This is character actions, but it can also pertain to character details. It can also pertain to setting details. And if I accidentally say character details instead of character actions, you know what we're going into. So, that said, and also with the dialogue, I know you probably just noticed that there were no descriptives on how they were going to talk right there. If I don't feel it's necessary, I'm not going to insult you and include it. By this point in time, you know, whenever the Alaspies are being enthusiastic, it's more common for me to include the details on how things are working in the beginning of things, or whenever we're getting into emotions. But that's one we detailed earlier, and you've seen before. So those ones were good ones for no detail on the dialogue, no detail going into the dialogue, and I purposely wanted to use those as an example. I purposely wanted to stop right here and just touch on both of those. The one thing again to start, and then the new thing, just to kind of show it. Alright, we move on now to scene 8, which is going to be an exterior setting / location. Still night, still early AM. Continued from last scene. The Lasby station wagon can be seen slowing down a bit as it exits the interstate via an off-ramp, and Martin soon finds a place to pull over so that Paulette can take the wheel. The vehicle soon comes to a stop, and the couple can be seen getting out of the vehicle on their respective sides and walking toward the other side of the car in order to switch seats. As the car starts back up, now with Paulette behind the wheel, we get back on the road and resume the journey west, which will begin the next shot. The next shot and the next short montage piece, actually. Alright. Here we go, number 9, scene 9. This is going to be another exterior setting / location. It is going to be still night, still early AM. continued from last scene. This scene is meant to be a part of the montage piece continued, and is meant to again move the driving part along while still showing an understandable perspective of what is happening in the timeline, moving the Lasbies from night to day and back into night again, or from early AM to sunrise, then throughout the entire day, the entirety of the daytime hours, and finally back into the next night. We're just about halfway to our destination when this act begins, and we will make it there before this scene ends. With that said, the scenery and man-made structures should already be looking a bit less decadent than those on the last stint of the journey, with the areas becoming less populated and the landscape becoming more and more uneven, hilly, and rugged. Late in the day, toward the end of this journey, mountains start coming into view, and as the sun begins to set in the sky, the Lasby's vehicle can be seen beginning to drive through them. Just to be clear, this scene quickly covers a full 24-hour driving portion of Martin and Paulette Lasby's grand adventure. Maybe have the radio come back on at some point, perhaps as the sun is rising, allowing a prevalent and powerful traveling music song to fade in and play out as this portion of the montage piece runs its course. I could definitely see this scene flipping in between interior and exterior shots of the Lasby station wagon on the road, sort of doing something different than just the montage piece over and over again, kind of mixing it up, because we don't have credits to put here or anything like that, but yeah, I could definitely see this flipping in between interior and exterior shots of the Lasby station wagon on the road, giving the characters some silent face time, and if so, please make sure to show the two taking turns behind the wheel. I would like for this scene to end with the Lasby station wagon entering a hotel complex out in New World's mountainous west at night in the wee early AM hours. The Lasby station wagon needs to be seen pulling up and parking at the hotel complex. Martin and Paulette get out of their vehicle and enter the main building to rent a room, and in that case, maybe even a little dialogue about how we're here and we've arrived. You know how enthusiastic the Lasbys can be by now. But yeah, maybe a little dialogue like we're here and we've arrived as the Lasbys walk from their car to the building. I would prefer not to cut to an interior shot of the hotel room until Act 3. That would be my preference. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Act 3 right now. And, well, you'll see why. We will get to that in, I believe, the dialogue. Act 3, evening of day 3. So we're already at the end of the day. Hey, how about that? Interior, daytime, evening, just prior to sunset. This scene begins in an empty hotel room out west. It's not at all a fancy room, just the one room containing a twin bed and a single window to look out. There are sheets and a thick blanket covering the bed and pillows lying on it up by its headboard. The bed's wooden headboard is backed up against one of the walls separating the rooms. 2 nightstands are set up at either side of the bed, the backs of the nightstands practically touching the bed's headboard. A Gideon's Bible can be found in the singular top drawer of one of these nightstands. There's a dresser for hotel guests to store their things in during their stay. There's a television, a digital clock, and a radio set on top of the dresser. There's a little bathroom section and some closet space towards the back of the bedroom. There is a little refrigerator for storing cold items, but there is no kitchen. The walls are white, the carpet a grayish-blue color, which appears clean but also looks a little old and worn. All in all, it's a small, cozy room, but it's not the Ritz or the Ramada Inn or something like that. The tranquility and stillness of this hotel room is suddenly broken when the door handle to the room suddenly shakes and then turns. The door swings open and Martin and Paulette Lasby enter the room. The camera will pick up on the fact that this is quite obviously the Lasby's hotel room, whereas the dialogue will pick up on the fact that the Lasbys have already been out on a bit of a day's worth of adventuring. The dialogue will pick up with a conversation that's already in progress. This will be related to main settings / locations, marked in bold by the letter D. Paulette, addressing Martin and sounding fatigued. Well, what more could we have done? We're just getting started. Martin, responding to Paulette and also sounding fatigued. You're right. I guess I didn't count on the long drive being so exhaustive. Alright, pause for character actions. The Lasbys put down any gear they're carrying, such as backpacks, duffel bags, a small cooler for picnic items and drinks, and things of that such. They then head for the bed. Back to dialogue. Paulette. Me neither, but they always are. Martin. Yeah, I guess you're right. Character actions. They remove their shoes and socks in preparation to lie down and relax a little. Paulette, speaking while removing a shoe. We'll feel better and more rested tomorrow. Then we'll be up to filling our days with activities. Martin, smiling at Paulette's comment, Martin enthusiastically replies, I'm looking forward to that and to not feeling so tired throughout the day. Paulette, well, you know the fatigue will go away. Martin, yep, I know. Character actions. They lie down next to each other on the bed, both looking and feeling pooped. Martin, again, lying in the hotel room's bed to Paulette's right, sprawled out with his left arm wrapped around Paulette and his right arm stretched up over his head and hanging off the bed a little. Martin remarks, Wow, I'm beat. Maybe it wasn't a long day, but I think we had a good first day. Don't you, Paulette? Paulette, responding to Martin, spoken in a tired-sounding voice, except for the third sentence, which comes after a brief pause and is meant to arouse a little excitement. We sure did. I love exploring the mountains. And just the landscape in general out here. I can't believe how huge some of the trees are. Martin, it sure is a lot different than it is back home. Paulette, it's because we live in the city. How would you like to live out here all of the time? Martin, smoking as though he is facing a realization about himself. However, the last sentence is spoken like he's still a dreamer at heart. He says, I guess I just couldn't give up my work, nor my lifestyle for that matter, and everything else that we have going on back home to actually commit to making the move. But I sure do romanticize about us doing something just like that. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Paulette cheerfully points out, maybe one day we will. Who knows what the future has in store for us? You do know, Martin, that we're going to have to retire someday. Martin, first sentence spoken lightly but also rather matter-of-factly. After a brief pause, the second, final sentence is spoken very warmly and passionately. Well, Paulette, that time is still a long way off. But I'm just glad we're here right now. Paulette, smiling in response to Martin's last remark and spoken sincerely. Me too, honey. Martin, starting his sentence but feeling as if he's not getting his words quite right. Martin then pauses but rewords himself and gets it right in the end. This is going to be, and we're using an ellipses here, no, this is the best vacation ever. Paulette agreeing with Martin and then picking a quote of her own to fit the instance. That's right, honey. Live for the moment. Martin, smiling and coming on to his wife. Well, we're here right now. Paulette, impressed by Martin's embrace. That we are. Character actions. Martin and Paulette Lasby start to fool around in the bed, stripping off their clothes and getting under the covers while making romantic noises and kissy-lovey sounds. Martin asking a question and almost killing the mood. Are you sure you want to try to drop in on these relatives of yours tomorrow? Paulette, scolding Martin by saying the name loudly and with a certain emphasis. Martin! Martin, wishing he hadn't even brought up the subject. Okay, Paulette, okay, sheesh. It crossed my mind, so I asked, that's all. Paulette, relenting, well, don't ask again. Martin, okay, I won't. Paulette, look, we don't have to go tomorrow, considering how worn we've both been today. Still, I would like to pay them a visit sometime soon. Martin, spoken with a big smile and in a rather playful but chivalrous tone of voice. Then, my dear, we shall. Paulette, laughing at her husband's antics. Okay, that's what I want to hear. Character actions. The mood in the room is not ruined. Paulette sees to it that it isn't. She kisses Martin, more or less to shut him up, and then they continue to roll around, now beneath the sheets, as the scene fades out. We move on to Backwoods, prior to Act 4. Alright, as was mentioned, it's up to you, Mr. or Mrs. Director, and the film crew to work out the details of how they feel the piece would best be done. But if something like the montage piece strikes my fancy and I could see how it could be done and communicated to you, yes, then I will mention it and use it in this script. But again, we want to encourage creativity whenever it comes to seeing these things. I can present it one way, but you can use your imagination. Also, note that I do like connecting the scenes and describing as much as possible as if it were happening in real time, each scene connecting to the next, which can make for quite a bit of a storyline. Again, please understand that this was written as a full-length novel, first and foremost, but in the screenplay format. It is meant to be a very detailed and descriptive piece of work, and therefore is also a lengthy piece of work. With that said, please think of this as the long version covering the entirety of the story. This manuscript could, of course, be shortened for budget or time constraints without taking away from the overall plot, which would really just be a matter of less being said, with characters moving toward main points in the story without so many of the extended dialogues. That's at least one way I can see for shortening this manuscript. Alright, but we'll be introducing the story's main antagonists, Byron and Malin Wade, in this next act. I must admit that I like to view Act 1 through Act 5 as the introductory scenery and exploration chapters as we take our time getting settled in out west. This will be a long act, this upcoming one. Actually, Act 4 is the longest act in this manuscript. This is also the act where the story will change, but only toward the end of the act, really. I mean, it starts to gain its footing and become, well, this is where the theme of escalation, which drives this story's central plot, will really begin. But again, we'll get to that, and you'll see how it all unfolds day by day, act by act. There will be a lot of scene changes in this next act. Note that anytime I change the scenery, the story will go through a cut to advance the scene. For example, if we go from a shot inside of a vehicle to a shot outside of a vehicle, the scene will change and the scene number, which appears in bold, will advance by 1, all of which will show up prior to the next paragraph's descriptives. Likewise, if we move from an interior scene inside a set location to an exterior scene outside of a set location, a scene change will of course occur. Also, note that the next act, Act 4, will begin with another time lapse, this time skipping forward a day rather than advancing to the end of a day as we encountered in the previous act. And, well, without further ado, we will go ahead and pick up, and we'll pick up with Act 4, which will be day 5, and we will explore the old Talbot farm, the Wade's place. But again, that'll be the next act in the next video. I thank you for tuning in and viewing this video. Thank you as always. I hope you enjoyed. Alright, goodbye.